It's 11 o'clock in the morning. This is Brunch from 107.7. It's great of you to choose us to spend your morning with. Mark Lyndersay. He's a writer, photographer, and many other good things. He's our guest here this morning. There is a need to lead, and that need to lead has allowed a lot of the conventional news outlets to be more tolerant of the social media reporters, for instance, as their contributors without spending enough time in fact checking. Mm-hmm. That is a real problem we have, isn't it?
In that the stuff that reporters tend to bring to a station tends to be community level, tends to be personal. This drain is falling apart, this bridge is collapsing, this river is overflowing. These are things that, yes, it'd be nice to be able to fact check it, but it's not earth-shattering stuff if it turns out to not be true. It would be unfortunate. And, of course, you'd want to blacklist somebody who's consistently spreading misinformation that way. But on a community level, that's the equivalent of letter writers who are espousing a personal view based on something they have experienced or something they've observed.
I concur with that, as long as news deliverers treat it in their delivery as that, instead of giving the impression that it is an official situation. And I agree with you. A lot of this is kind of pedestrian, but some of it is actually impactful on a bigger level because newsrooms feel they no longer have to staff themselves with people, but instead depend on what is floating on the internet as the source of content.
That's always an unfortunate judgment. That's a slippery slope that takes you downhill very, very quickly.
If you don't have the experience to be able to sift the wheat from the chaff.
That's right.
Well, what that means is that you have more editors instead of reporters because you have this massive information coming up that you have to sift through and correlate and so on. In the end, I suspect it's probably cheaper to train more decent reporters to gather the information from those sources and correlate and confirm. Okay,
the silly season. Let's go straight into. Yes, you did. The silly season. Let's go straight there. The silly season and social media. Speak to that. Let's get directly into what is before us, which is what Sharmain clearly stated when we got into the conversation.
Yes, that is what you wooed me on the show with.
You know that.
Well, it's from my experience, it's pretty unprecedented that we're going into election at least this early that we're getting. 2010, I've figured, you are more experienced. You would have been looking at this more critically long before me, but 2010 was at least the partnership was a little stronger in social media. Then all between 2010 and 2015, non-stop social media was pumping with politics, and now they both taken it to another level. We have, no Rowdy.com raised flags, but we've had memes, a series of Facebook pages created by dubious bodies and organizations purporting to be one or the other. And clearly misinforming people in a lot of instances, you know. And then comes the government giving this point of view through its official pages in long, boring, unexciting formats, so but yet they're coming interesting and exciting when they're going at GoRowdy.com. They're trying to hype it up. Apart from giving us just your perspective on how we reached there in terms of social media, how it worked between 2010 and now, and why it's such an important part in this election, we want to know what kind of money is being spent, because the questions were put to Rodney Charles, campaign manager of the partnership. What kind of money is being spent, or what kind of money can be spent in social media that you have ads popping up on YouTube or wherever, popping up on the internet all the time?
Okay, that's about 15 questions.
Yeah, about
right
15.
there.
Yeah, that's okay. You'll keep track of them. I trust you.
All right, let's start with the history.
Yes.
In 2010, we had a very different internet landscape than we do now.
Yeah.
5 years in technology is...
a million years in real life.
It's like 50 years in traditional media evolution. In 2010, the People's Partnership was, by any measure, leagues ahead of the PNM in its social media and internet presence. They understood a lot more about how to manipulate it, how to make use of it, and how to reach people with it. and the people who consume it will come back to you and buy your product. Advertising on the internet, however, takes advantage of the fact that while we use the internet, we give up a lot of our personal information.
Yes.
We give up information about where we are. Just our IP address tells people where we are. We give up information about our age when we fill out forms. We give up information about our gender. And we do this on an ongoing basis in exchange for the freeness. A lot of these services are free. So that information gets into a large pool that gets circulated around. And while it's non-specific, you can't say, well, like, this person is Sharmain Baboolal and she lives here and she does this and so on. But in a general, we can say all these people are in Port of Spain and Trinidad. All these people are of this age. All these people are of this gender. And when you buy an ad, you can say, I want to talk to those people.
Just sticking a pin in that just for a quick moment, because if almost anybody read the long 25 boiler pages attached to everything you download, they will realize they have given up everything. They have the right to go into your computer, look at all your friends, look at all your contacts, and they can use it. I'm sorry, you can take the pin back out.
It's more of what we
It's important for folks to understand that, because you go about, you get something free, you think it's free. Nothing in life, Daddy said, as you recall, is indeed.
No, not at all.
So that's how folks use that for advertising. But when Sharmain asked the question about how much money you think is going to be spent into it, I know that a number of studies have been done as to actually what is the return on an internet advertising, and most media houses I know did not find, including the New York Times, as much as they anticipated that was projected. So how much money is really being spent? Is that easy to quantify? I mean, can we get around to that? Because the internet goes really cheap. I mean, if I took, his eyes, I think it is called,
eyeballs.
Right? Eyeballs. If I took 1,000 eyeballs, it's nothing. Nobody pays attention to me. But because I have 1,000 eyeballs, does not necessarily say that I have 1,000 looking eyes.
No, but it will appear when somebody is looking at a thing. That's the thing they guarantee. When they go to the page, this will pop up in front of them and they'll see it.
But who was prepared to spend the money on that basis, and how much?
The truth of it is that it's not actually that much money.
No,
you're targeting maybe 1.5 million people. Even if you decided I'm going to target all the people of Trinidad and Tobago and all of the people who claim to be from Trinidad and Tobago within the diaspora, you're talking maybe 2.5 million people. And you're saying, okay, fine, I want every single time one of them clicks on a page, I want to see this. I can't assign a figure to that without actually going into a Facebook page and working up a profile that says this is how much you should spend. But I am guessing that for, what do we have, 2 months until the election, I would suspect that would cost maybe $200,000.
Yeah, but I remember.
5 weeks or so, so make it less.
I remember at one point it was 0.2 cents for every 1,000 eyeballs you get. So, I mean, it's not even any money in this thing as far as what it's costing people to do it. That's why they can do it liberally.
Yeah. So you do it on Google, you do it on Facebook, you do it on Twitter, and you just pick every outlet where people are not on everything. So it's not even that many things you have to cover. And you just say, okay, fine. A lot of people have ads on their pages that they haven't sold to a specific person, and they just put some Google code inside there and say, okay, fine. A Google ad will appear there, expecting that it will be from somebody from Trinidad who's selling something and so on. Instead, what they're going to get now is an ad for Kamala, an ad for the PNM showing up in that space because somebody's paid to be there.
Yeah. From what you've been analyzing so far, what you would have analyzed so far with both the two main contenders in the elections, who's doing what? I don't necessarily want to say who's better than who, but who's doing what? What whose strength is where? Who's more aggressive? Who's what?
What I think I'm seeing clearly coming through in the election is, in terms of strategy, it's very much a train. Think of it as a train. At the front of the train, facing the public, are the political leaders. Behind them is an engine of public relations that's fueling that. And then every single other person behind them is in that train being pulled along by it. There are people who are being put forward to contest the election But at this point, I cannot tell you who is contesting where because they're virtually invisible.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, we're putting this guy up for here, putting this girl up for here, this lady is going to contest there, and then they get tossed into the back of the train as part of this big political engine that's going down the road. All of the energy is going into political leader profiles, which is why the current climate is not about issues. It's about who's better than who to lead the nation. When in fact the nation may be led by a political leader, but it is governed by a cabinet.
Yeah.
And that cabinet is occupying no part of any discussion.
And that is unfortunate. You mentioned at the last time around at the beginning, 5 years ago, the PP was in front as far as the understanding the technology. How has the the major opposition group, the PNM, how are they settling now? I don't want to put you in the horse race, but I mean, essentially that's what we have to say. If they were behind then, where are they now?
They are better than they were in 2010. They're not operating in the league of the People's Partnership.
They're not operating in the league
of the People's Partnership. And that is partly a good thing because the whole New Rowley campaign thing is so desperately ill-advised.
Yes, it is really
I can't even believe that they mounted a rival campain. I mean, that was something to just leave alone.
When your enemy is dying, just let him go.
Don't pick up a sword because you look like a bully.
Yes.
And it was just so desperately ill-advised that I can't believe they're putting any weight behind it at all. That one surprised me because they have tended to be much savvier than that in terms of understanding who their audience is and who they need to persuade.
But I'm getting the impression from listening to Rodney Charles that this is just 1/3 of his plan, as off-putting as it is, to say the least. You know, he's saying this is just 1/3 of his campaign that is just no Rowley, and you're telling him about his plans and policies that he doesn't have. And then Rodney Charles is on television earlier this week smiling. He says, well, now we hear that they're going to give out their manifesto, which is they baited him. Use the campaign to bait him to give out his manifesto ahead of the PP publishing theirs, so they can read theirs and better it. So that's all part of the strategy. And as you know, it's 5 weeks down the road, so they can ditch that campaign because everybody is turned off by it. Ditch it and then move on to the next one. It seems that's the road that they're heading.
Well, as a consumer, I can hope that he's saving the best for last.
Exactly.
And best is relative, yes. Mark, I do want to ask you this. Who actually benefits in the sense of politicians, individuals? I agree with you that it's the cabinet. I agree with you. I agree with the facts. The cabinet is, in fact, going to run the country. But who is really benefiting? Is it ill-advised to have your candidates do their business through social media in the sense of forums, in the sense of, because it's dynamic. Folks can say things that is not coming out of the body but coming from the individual. If you had to advise a political party, would you say, guys, it is a good thing to have your candidates go up there and answer questions on the internet, or is best for us to wait for some releases coming out of more in the conventional way?
I think a lot of that would have to do with the confidence that the specific political party has in the people
and the individuals, yes.
And their capacity to perform in that space. That we are not seeing very much of it. We are seeing some.
Well, you saw Mr. Alexander too, and you go like.
Well, Mr. Alexander is Mr. Alexander. Maxi Cuffy is very vocal, but then he's experienced with handling the media. Stuart Young is as well. On the PP side. Vasant Bharat is the communications minister, so we should be seeing him. I'm not seeing nearly enough coming from their side in terms of there's a second tier behind the Prime Minister that's considered to be people who perform and people who engage well with the media, who are not articulating the kind of supporting, engaged presence that says this is a group of people who are seeking to guide and advise the electorate on their process. It's still very much a kind of point of the spear thing. It's political leader to point a political leader at the tip of the spear, and very little behind it seems to have any sort of breath or resonance to it, which is, I find, quite different from what happened in 2010. You saw a lot more of the people who were actually contesting the election. There's, of course, time for those people to begin making their presence. For all I know, they're all being briefed and coached as we speak to make that kind of presence felt. Because at the end of the day, while there may be a group of people who will vote for a symbol, there is also a group of people who are going to vote based on whose name is on the ballot paper. And if they don't know who you are or what you look like, they're going to vote for the person they have a sense or understanding about.
But even though the PNM got a head start, a clear and healthy head start when they completed and presented their slate, right? So I've seen that. Remember, as way back as when Clarence Rambarat was earmarked to do Mayaro, so he's been active on social media, on Facebook all the time, really active, working on the ground in the constituency and reporting everything on Facebook, like almost all the other constituents. Yet there was a town meeting via TV6 in Moruga recently, and the candidate, who is confirmed, he's going to go up as a candidate, is there. He's sitting and he's unaware of what the party's policies are, so he's not saying anything. So if you ask him what the plans the PNM has for the constituency, he's unable to say. And then again on this week, it was Monday night, Raleigh has been having these small sessions. He had one in Goodwood Park, there was one in St. Joseph. And as you rightly said, he was the person speaking. The Singh was the MP was sitting there. Just thing. So it's both parties are responsible for that. But do you think that the PNM is responding to the PP because they are pushing it as a Kamla campaign and Kamla versus Rowley, and the PNM is responding to that and being dragged into it?
I'm not sure I can say who is. I know the People's Partnership took the lead from the minute they announced Kamla 2015, it was very clear. It was like, this is a Kamla People's Partnership campaign. That the PNM appears to have responded to it by crafting their own strategy to position Dr. Rowley in that space, does not necessarily mean that's what they're actually doing. To my mind, the reality of politics would seem to suggest that you need as many well-informed people speaking on your behalf as possible on the ground during an election campaign. That just seems to be common sense to me. And Dr. Rowley, as energetic as he is, and Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, as well supplied as she is with resources, can't talk to everybody. These people have to go into their constituencies and talk to their constituents in a knowledgeable way. And they have to be able to do it on public fora as well.
Who are taking their news from social media, younger folks who are not usually inclined to vote. So the emphasis should be, while you should be cognizant of the impact of social media, the attention has to come back to what you say. Get down on the ground, meet people, and stay with conventional media, because most of the folks of the 45-plus age group, who are basically the bloc that's always going to come out and vote, they are satisfied listening to what they term the credible media.
That is a perspective that can be substantiated to some extent. But I want to tell you that my own casual observation of social media circles suggests to me that young people who are engaged with the idea of voting or exercising their franchise are gathering a lot of their information from their peers and colleagues and what's shared among them. And there is a middle class, older, say 35 to 55 group that is also very engaged in that space.
It's interesting
and communicating among themselves.
Yes, once you go.
It's not a discussion that is around what the erstwhile president has described rumshop politics. They're raising issues. They're looking for answers. They're asking questions that are not being answered.
I would like him to one day explain that.
And you see, look at that. And they're not being engaged in that space by officials. Mr. Alexander, who you mentioned earlier, is actually very good at operating in that space. He knows a lot of those folks, and he engages communications in that space very effectively. But very few of the traditional of the People's Partnership or PNM people are active in that space. Maxi is. Maxi tends to be very active in that space as well.
Yeah, because he has that background as a journalist, and he's aware of media trends as well. Yeah.